In 1906, President Teddy Roosevelt created the nation's first national monument designation. The purpose of this designation was to preserve for all Americans significant pieces of the country's history. Ecology, geology, and beauty. All national monuments are designated by U.S. presidents and are chosen as their personal memorials of those most special parts of this great country. Memorials that they saw a need to protect over all others. Some are big. Some are small. Some garner large budgets and staff. Others next to none. All were chosen by presidents who considered them the most important places to protect over all other places in the country. America's national monuments tell the story of the nation's past and present glory. In Legacy of the Great Plains, we will visit the 10 monuments associated with America's once vast grasslands.
The geology of the Great Plains is a product of long periods of sedimentary buildup followed by equally long periods of erosion. The result today is a dramatic landscape of bluffs, pinnacles, and badlands. Badlands that contain a rich story of ancient sea creatures, dinosaurs, and long extinct giant land mammals. However, it was the rising up of the Black Hills in the middle of the Great Plains that created dramatic geological features. Join me, Bo Svensson, and I'll show you 3 world-class geologic wonders. Teddy Roosevelt was the nation's only true environmental president, the father of the national park system. Through the Antiquities Act, passed in 1906, presidents were permitted to preserve parts of Americana with a monument designation. The first place to receive such an honor was an extraordinary monolith in northeastern Wyoming, Devil's Tower National Monument.
There's nothing quite like it. The first time one gazes upon Devil's Tower. The first time one stands in the presence of one of the planet's great monoliths. A feeling comes over you. A feeling of profound awe that reaches deep into the soul. It is a feeling that arises again and again with each new view of the tower and with each change of light. Such are the feelings evoked by Devil's Tower. Located in the northeast corner of Wyoming, the towering monolith dominates the plains below. Designated in 1906 by President Teddy Roosevelt, Devil's Tower is the nation's first national monument. The tower has a long, mystical connection to the Plains Indian tribes, the Sioux, Cheyenne, Kiowa, Arapaho, and Crow. In Steven Spielberg's feature film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the alien mothership lands here. After a summer storm, the monolith shows its magic. Devil's Tower is not only a wonder of the Great Plains, but one of the great natural wonders of the world. The rocks found within the Devil's Tower National Monument can be divided into two types, sedimentary and igneous. The tower itself is made up of super hard igneous rock, formed directly from the cooling and crystallization of molten lava from the Earth's interior. The tower is 800 feet in diameter and soars 1,270 feet above the Belle Fourche River that cuts through the monument. The most striking geological features of the tower are its five-sided vertical columns. According to Native American legend, they were produced by a giant bear clawing the tower. In fact, they were produced by extremely rare conditions of cooling and shrinking of the lava that formed the monolith. Nowhere else can such a striking example of this phenomenon be seen. Measuring 6 to 8 feet in diameter, these columns drop vertically from the top of the monolith until about 2/3 of the way down. From there, they flare out into a boulder field at the base of the tower. Interestingly, the surface of the tower's rock is covered with a primitive life form, lichens. The multicolored lichens are made up of fungus and algae living in a symbiotic relationship. It is the lichens that give the tower its green and gold hues. Surrounding Devil's Tower is a sequence of sedimentary rocks from the Triassic and Jurassic periods, the ages of the dinosaur. So how did the tower come to be as we see it today?
One of the most common questions is, how did the tower get here? And for that, we have to step back in time. If we were here about 100 million years ago, we would actually be underwater. At that time, there were different deposits that were here from the shallow seas, and the seas came and went, and the next sea that came in, more deposits were laid through. Over the millions of years, there was layer upon layer that was left behind. And if we move up in time to about 60 million years of age, we would actually be standing about a mile above where we're at now. That's how many layers had been left behind. At that time, 60 million years ago, the Rocky Mountains and the Black Hills were formed. And with all that pressure and the tectonic plate movement, all of those layers of sandstone and siltstone broke and they fractured, and that left pathways for the magma to well up into the surrounding sedimentary rock. And that's really how the tower formed. And it formed about 1.5 miles below the surface. And over millions of years, all of that surrounding sandstone and siltstone has moved away and eroded away to leave the tower that we see today.
Prayer cloths hanging in the branches of trees at the base of the tower indicate the sacredness of the monolith to the native peoples of the region. In fact, the Plains Indian secret Sundance ceremony, performed during the summer solstice, has often been held within the monument's boundaries. However, it is unclear the exact relationship the tower had to the nomadic warrior tribes of the Great Plains during the 18th and 19th centuries. Oral traditions recorded in the 20th century associate the tower with the grizzly bear. Indeed, the first reported reference to the tower was by a passing military party in 1857. Viewing it from a telescope, a Sioux interpreter called it the Bear's Lodge, or Bear's Teepee. But it was a U.S. Army officer, Colonel Richard Irving Dodge, for whom Dodge City, Kansas is named, who gave the tower its designation. In his definitive book, The Black Hills, he wrote, "The Indians call the shaft the Bad God's Tower." By the 1880s, the name had become simplified to Devil's Tower. Now, on any favorable weather day, rock climbers can be seen ascending and descending the tower's face. For those that make it to the summit, the mystery of what's on top is revealed.
One of the most common questions that we get is, what's on top? And back in 1893, there were two local ranchers, Willard Ripley and William Rogers, who both had that very same question. and figured out that the only way they were going to get there is if they climbed. They came up with a variety of different ideas as to how to get to the top. One was to tie a rope to a kite and fly the kite up toward the tower. When that didn't work, their plan was to get the rope caught in one of the crevices and then be able to climb up it. And finally, on the south side of the tower, they found a crevice that looked like it stayed the same width apart and went from the bottom all the way to the summit, to the tower. Being ranchers, they were very familiar with fence posts, and they took fence posts, cut them to about 3 feet in length, tapered the end, and they pounded these posts into the crevice of the tower. And that became the wooden rungs, the stakes, for a ladder.
Technical climbing of the tower began in the 1930s. By the 1980s, the tower had become a mecca for climbers.
Now, we can expect between 4,000 and 5,000 climbers every year. Only about half of our climbers choose to go to the summit. There are over 220 climbing routes that have been established. Only about 80 of them go to the summit of the tower. And what's unique about the tower are the columns. And what climbers come here to do is crack climbing. They're climbing where the joints of the columns come together. And if they're going to the summit, it will take them anywhere between 4 to 6 hours and 1 to 2 hours to rappel down.
Whether as a climber, Native American, or tourist, the monolith on the Great Plains beckons to us and speaks to our sense of wonder and reverence for something greater than ourselves.
Shortly after designating Devil's Tower National Monument, Roosevelt designated Jewel Cave National Monument, also in the Black Hills area. This remarkable cave was found quite by accident at the start of the 20th century and remained largely unexplored until a husband and wife team, Herb and Jan Kahn, brought its wonders to light in the 1960s.
The Black Hills, that scenic island of mountains and pine forest in the middle of the Great Plains. The sacred land to the warriors of those same Great Plains. Silently gliding through the sky, the Black Hills below. Then, Jewel Cave National Monument. Proclaimed a monument by Teddy Roosevelt in 1908, it is one of the nation's oldest. It's time to go underground.
Well, right now we're in the elevator going down 23 stories. Once the door opens up, it's going to be 49 degrees Fahrenheit with 98% humidity.
Jewel Cave beckons, invites the visitor into the unknown. Jewel Cave is the most complex and perhaps the longest cave in the world. It is a labyrinth of underground catacombs reaching 5,000 miles into the earth. Even the average tourist is an explorer in this cave, able to spot a shape, a color, a formation never seen before. Caves have been central to the human mythos, the ultimate place of mystery where all life comes from and returns. The womb of the life force itself. Christ arose from a cave. Plato's ultimate truth was held in a cave. And the earliest humans lived in caves. Jewel Cave is a seemingly endless network of narrow passageways leading to one spectacular chamber after another. It has it all. Every kind of cave formation. Stalactites, stalagmites, the colorful bacon drapery, slender soda straws, reflecting pools of water, boxworks, fractures in the limestone, cave onyx, dripstones, spectacular giant draperies. And what Jewel Cave is best known for, its crystal-lined walls. The Black Hills are the easternmost part of the mountain building event that produced the Rocky Mountain uplift some 60 million years ago. Surrounded by prairie, the Black Hills form a semi-arid ponderosa pine ecosystem, an ecosystem whose members include the white-tailed deer, the mule deer, even elk, and an assortment of birds such as the magpie and the wild turkey. In an interesting way, it was the Rocky Mountain uplift that produced Jewel Cave and the hundreds of smaller caves in the Black Hills.
Well, one of the layers that was cracked and fractured by the uplift of the granite, the central core of the Black Hills, was a layer of limestone. In this area we call the limestone the Pahasapa limestone. That's the Lakota word for hills black, and that's how the Black Hills got their name. This layer of limestone, the Pahasapa limestone, cracked and fractured with the uplift of the Black Hills. That allowed rainwater and groundwater to seep into the cracks and fractures and formed the cavities and passages that are now the cave passages that we see as Jewel Cave today.
And the process continues today. The human history of Jewel Cave began when two locals found an old entrance like this one.
So the first known entry that we have into Jewel Cave is not until 1900. Two brothers were riding up Hell Canyon, and it was one of those days where the canyon was breathing out. It was exhaling. And they were 60 feet at the bottom of the canyon, and they said it sounded like a roar. They could just hear the air rushing out. So they investigated, they climbed up the canyon wall, and they found a hole about this big. It was too small for them to get into, but they were miners. So they went back and got some dynamite and maybe some blasting powder, and they enlarged the opening. Basically, they blew the entrance to the cave open. And that was the first entry into the cave.
8 years later, it was a national monument. Gradually, the cave was explored and opened to visitors on guided tours. Jewel Cave's history is really its future. What has yet to be discovered.
But that exploration continues because the mission of the National Park Service is to preserve and protect the cave for future generations. Well, we have to know where the cave is. And that's the purpose of exploration, and that's continuing. And I think that kind of ties back to the whole human history. As soon as people have entered this cave, there's always been that need to see, you know, where does it go? What are we going to see in that next room? What are we going to find? So this cave really gives people that opportunity to fulfill that need, that human need to explore and to discover and see new things. And that continues. And if all estimates are right, that's going to continue for a long time before we find all of this cave, hundreds of years possibly, before all of this cave is found, if we're ever able to find all of it.
Jewel Cave, one of the great natural wonders of the world, stands ready to invite visitors to explore the mysteries and mythos hidden deep within the earth.
The Great Plains contain one of the world's richest fossil records. The frequently exposed bluffs and badlands contain some of the finest examples of ancient sea life. At one time, the Great Plains were the real Jurassic Park, populated with every kind of dinosaur. And when the dinosaurs disappeared, they were replaced by spectacular fauna of now extinct large mammals. The most famous fossil death site of that era is preserved at Agate Fossil Beds National Monument.
Located in Nebraska's Panhandle, Agate Fossil Beds National Monument is classic high plains prairie, punctuated by hills, badlands, and bluffs. bluffs that have weathered over time into a myriad of strange shapes. During the hot summer, an afternoon thunderstorm is an almost daily occurrence. The monument's rabbits seek shelter within the bluff's many ledges. These intense, isolated convection storms contain great beauty and great power. Designated a national monument in 1965 by Lyndon Baines Johnson, the land was once the working ranch of a singularly fascinating man, James Cook. Symbolized by the twin teepees and the twin hills, the monument brings together the story of the Sioux Nation's greatest war chief, Red Cloud, and one of the most important fossil finds of all time. The 1-mile hike to the Twin Hills crosses the Niobrara River and a lush wetland of reed grasses and cattails, an oasis of greenery in this arid plain. Ahead on the left is University Hill, and on the right, Carnegie Hill. A century ago, they were two of the Great Plains' most productive fossil bone quarries. Even today, scientists estimate that at least 75% of the fossil-bearing parts of the hills remain unquarried. From these layers, the existence of strange and wonderful new animals that lived 30 million years ago were revealed.
This is a historic dig site. There aren't any active digs going on within the monument boundary. And that's what we like to tell people when they come up here and expect to find bones hanging out of the cliffside. You know, we tell them that this park doesn't just protect the fossil bones, but also the historic dig site. As though you're standing on the battlefield of Gettysburg. You wouldn't expect to find soldiers, but you can imagine what it was like.
All that remains today of a glorious time of discovery are a few bone fragments scattered around an anthill. Off to the west of the hills is the original Cook homestead. Now called the Bone Cabin, it was once home and laboratory to the paleontologists that quarried the Twin Hills. A number of the excavated fossil animals are on display in the monument's visitor center. The visitor center is also home to one of the most cherished collection of Sioux artifacts. Artifacts given to James Cook by his beloved friend, Chief Red Cloud. Today, natural history museums around the world proudly display fossils collected from University and Carnegie Hills within Agate Fossil Beds National Monument. By the middle of the 19th century, it became known to scientists that the Great Plains contain one of the richest caches of fossil bones on the planet. Some of the best-known dinosaurs were first found in Great Plains quarries: allosaurs, stegosaurs, brontosaurs. The most famous and complete T-Rex, known as Sioux, was found east of the Black Hills. When the dinosaurs died off 65 million years ago, they were replaced by some large and bizarre mammals. A snapshot from the past of the Agate fossil beds would have revealed a land that looked very much like the present-day Serengeti Plains of Africa. Only these plains were populated by large herds of early mammals, such as primitive horses, rhinos, and camels. The bone beds at Agate Fossil Monument represent a time 20 million years ago, during the last part of the age of mammals. The most unusual animal collected at the monument was the Dinohyus, the terrible pig. This giant predecessor of the warthog was a ferocious predator. The visitor center displays a number of beautifully preserved fossil remains from this ancient time. Bone beds or death sites, like the one found at Agate Fossil Beds, present a mystery. Why did so many animals die in one spot? Answers to such questions are one of the most intriguing areas of paleontological study today. The history of Agate Fossil Beds National Monument centers around a unique friendship of three extraordinary men: frontiersman Captain James Cook, the Ogallala Sioux chieftain Red Cloud, and pioneering paleontologist O.C. Marsh. After the Civil War, the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad sent back to the east reports of extraordinary fossil bones lying exposed on the western plains. By 1870, the fossil wars had begun. Paleontologists roamed the West, looking for the next great fossil discovery. Leading the battle were Edward Drinker Cope from Carnegie Museum and O.C. Marsh from Yale. The year was 1874. An intense war had broken out between the Sioux Indian Nation and the U.S. cavalry. The Battle of the Little Bighorn was just 2 years away. And 1874 was also the year that Colonel George Armstrong Custer confirmed gold had been discovered in the Black Hills, precipitating a gold rush into these sacred Sioux lands. Marsh and his entourage set their fossil collecting sites on the area east of the Black Hills, in the middle of the Ogallala Sioux territory. Marsh needed permission and protection to search for fossils. In spite of the personal danger, Marsh persisted, and a meeting was arranged with Red Cloud. James Cook was called in to mediate. Cook, at the time, was a frontiersman with an impeccable understanding of the area. They met, and Marsh was allowed to hunt fossils on Sioux land. Remarkably then, these three men formed a lifelong friendship. Red Cloud visited Marsh at Yale. In time, Marsh taught Cook how to recognize fossil bone, and that Cook did. In 1885, somewhere around Carnegie and University Hills, James and his wife, Kate Graham, found the first of thousands of fossil mammal bones. By the turn of the century, the numerous quarry excavations have shown the site to be the best Miocene find the world has ever seen. Finally, after 1890, Red Cloud and his people visited the Cook Ranch every summer until his death in 1909. The museum at Agate Springs National Monument now contains gifts given to Cook during Red Cloud's visits. It is one of the finest collections of Sioux artifacts in the world.
Thanks for watching and experiencing with me the